United Kingdom. It's been described as a free speech festival. We're expecting to hear from Jordan Peterson and Katie Hopkins, but there is also a counter-protest march against fascism and stand up to racism, which is also due to take place. Many people feel that this is not a march in support of the United Kingdom, but rather a racist, essentially kind of...
London's divided streets, the Tommy Robinson march that split a nation. Right. Before we dive into what might be the most contentious Saturday London has seen in years, I need you to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stay plugged into UK Connors, because what happened on these streets tells us everything about where Britain stands today. And frankly, it's not pretty. Picture this. It's barely past dawn on a Saturday morning, and London's already bracing itself like a city preparing for siege. 1,000 police officers deployed. 1,600 on standby across the capital. Barriers erected. Sterile zones established. This isn't a state visit or a royal wedding. This is Britain in 2024, where the simple act of citizens expressing their views requires a small army to keep the peace. But here's where it gets interesting, and why Commander Claire Haynes felt compelled to reassure Londoners to carry on with their regular schedules whilst promising police would act without fear or favour. When your top brass needs to make such statements, you know we're not dealing with your average Saturday afternoon gathering. Are we? 2 marches, 2 ideologies, 1 city caught in the crossfire of what some are calling the battle for Britain's soul. On one side, Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom march, promising to snake from Stamford Street to the very heart of government power in Whitehall. On the other, Stand Up to Racism's march against fascism, mobilizing from Russell Square with Diane Abbott leading the charge. The irony isn't lost on anyone with half a brain, both sides claiming to march for Britain's future while simultaneously tearing it apart at the seams. Now, let's talk about the star-studded cast Robinson assembled for his little political theatre. Jordan Peterson, the Canadian psychology professor turned conservative darling. Katie Hopkins, never one to shy away from controversy. Charlie Kirk beaming in from across the pond because apparently America's culture wars weren't exciting enough. And in a delicious twist that would make reality TV producers weep with joy, former SAS man in Middleton turned up, adding a dash of military credibility to proceedings. Robinson himself proudly posted footage on X, dubbing them the A-Team. Though one wonders if the original A-Team would appreciate the comparison. The visual was striking, wasn't it? A table full of right-wing personalities, laughing and chatting with the casual confidence of people who believe history will vindicate them. Meanwhile, across London, another group were preparing their own narrative, one that painted Robinson supporters not as patriots but as something far more sinister. By 10 in the morning, the battle lines were drawn. Social media flooded with aerial shots of Stamford Street, where thousands had already gathered. The crowd was substantial, undeniably so. Whatever you think of their message, their numbers spoke of a movement that's captured something in the British psyche. But what exactly? Robinson supporters would tell you they are marching to protect women and girls. Noble cause, admirable intention, if you take it at face value. But Diane Abbott wasn't buying it for a second. Speaking from Russell Square with the righteous fury of someone who's been fighting these battles for decades, she delivered perhaps the most cutting line of the day. They are talking nonsense. Trying to portray men of color as a threat to women is a dangerous lie. We need to stop this dangerous lie. And there it was, the fundamental disagreement that's splitting Britain down the middle. Are Robinson supporters genuine patriots concerned about legitimate social issues? Or are they, as Abbott suggests, peddling racist narratives wrapped in the Union Jack? The truth, as always in British politics, is probably somewhere in the uncomfortable middle that nobody wants to acknowledge. If you're still watching, smash that subscribe button because this story gets even more complex. Abbott's counter-narrative was equally compelling. She spoke of unity, of standing against what she characterized as racist hotel protests, a reference that anyone following British politics will understand immediately. Her message to the government was crystal clear. Call this what it is. Stop dancing around the racism inherent in these movements. But here's what makes this fascinating from a political analysis perspective. Both sides were performing for the same audience. Both claimed to represent the real Britain. Both insisted they were the ones standing up for ordinary people. Both wrapped themselves in moral certainty whilst painting their opponents as existential threats to everything decent. The police, caught between these competing visions of Britain, implemented what can only be described as a masterclass in crowd control. Barriers separated the factions. A sterile zone prevented direct confrontation. Over 1,600 officers maintained order across a capital that was simultaneously hosting football matches, concerts, and the usual weekend revelries that make London one of the world's great cities. Commander Haynes's repeated assurance that police would act without fear or favor revealed more than perhaps she intended. In a functioning democracy, such statements would be redundant. Of course, the police act impartially. That she felt compelled to emphasize this point suggests just how fractured trust has become, how much both sides suspect the establishment of favoring their opponents. The media coverage itself became part of the story. Depending on which outlet you followed, you either witnessed thousands of concerned patriots exercising their democratic right to peaceful protest, or you watched racist agitators spreading dangerous lies about minority communities. Same streets, same crowds, completely different realities. This isn't just about Tommy Robinson or Diane Abbott. This is about Britain's inability to agree on basic facts about itself. What struck observers was a sheer organization on both sides. This wasn't spontaneous anger spilling onto the streets. These were coordinated political movements with sophisticated messaging, celebrity endorsements, and strategic planning. The Unite the Kingdom march didn't just happen. It was choreographed, branded, and promoted with precision of a product launch. Similarly, the March Against Fascism mobilized with the efficiency of a movement that's been preparing for this moment. The committee system in Parliament deserves special mention because it's where the real legislative work happens, yet it operates in almost complete obscurity. Select committees can summon ministers, demand documents, and publish reports that can make or break careers, but their proceedings attract about as much public attention as a rainy Tuesday in Slough. The Public Accounts Committee has exposed more government waste and incompetence than all the tabloid newspapers combined, yet most people couldn't name its chair. If you're not subscribing for insights like these, you're missing half the political story. Local government provides another masterclass in how democratic accountability gets subverted. Councils blame central government for cuts. Central government blames council for poor services, and voters are left wondering why their bin collection has been reduced to fortnightly while council tax keeps rising. The reality is that local government finance is so opaque and convoluted that genuine accountability is impossible. Business rates, council tax, central government grants, Section 106 agreements, community infrastructure levy. It's designed to confuse, and it succeeds brilliantly. The role of special advisors, SPADs, represents democracy's dirty secret. These unelected, partisan operators often wield more influence than junior ministers. They brief against civil servants, leak to journalists, and coordinate political strategy across government departments. When Dominic Cummings was effectively running the country from his Downing Street office, he wasn't accountable to Parliament, to voters, or to anyone except Boris Johnson. The SPAD system has created a parallel government structure where the real decisions are made by people whose names most voters don't know. Here's something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about British democracy: the role of international law in constraining domestic policy. The European Convention on Human Rights, various UN treaties, World Trade Organization rules, and countless other international agreements now set boundaries within which any British government must operate. A minister might promise tough immigration controls, but international law determines what's actually possible. The European Court of Human Rights has prevented the deportation of foreign criminals, overruled British courts, and shaped domestic policy from Strasbourg. Yet leaving these international legal frameworks is presented as radical extremism rather than democratic choice. The intelligence services operate with budgets that are secret, powers that are classified, and oversight that's largely invisible to the public. MI5, MI6, and GCHQ shape policy through intelligent assessments that politicians rarely question and voters never see. When the government claims a particular course of action is necessary for national security, who's checking whether that assessment is accurate? The Intelligence and Security Committee is briefed by the very agencies it's supposed to oversee, and its reports are so heavily redacted they are practically unreadable. Subscribe for more content examining these accountability gaps. The planning system provides a perfect case study in how supposedly democratic processes get captured by vested interests. Local planning committees, staffed by part-time counselors with day jobs, make decisions about developments that can reshape entire communities. Yet these decisions are based on planning law so complex that only specialist lawyers can navigate it. Developers employ teams of consultants and barristers, while local objectors rely on parish councilors and neighborhood groups. It's David versus Goliath, except David's fighting with a slingshot while Goliath has nuclear weapons. The audit system that's supposed to ensure public money is spent properly has been quietly dismantled over the past decade. The Audit Commission was abolished. Private auditing firms took over local government audits, and the National Audit Office's resources were cut. Meanwhile, government spending has become increasingly opaque, with billions channeled through arms-length bodies, special-purpose vehicles, and complex contractual arrangements designed to keep liabilities off government balance sheets. The result is that waste and corruption can flourish because nobody's effectively watching the watchers. Central bank digital currencies represent the next frontier in this erosion of democratic control. The Bank of England is actively researching a digital pound that would give the state unprecedented visibility into every transaction, every purchase, and every financial decision made by British citizens. Combined with social credit systems and ESG scoring, this could create a level of social control that would make George Orwell weep. Yet the debate about digital currencies focuses on technical implementation rather than democratic implications. The civil service's commitment to diversity and inclusion might sound admirable, but it's created an ideological uniformity that's just as problematic as the old boys network it replaced. Graduate recruitment prioritizes candidates who demonstrate commitment to progressive values. Unconscious bias training indoctrinates staff in particular worldviews, and dissenting voices are marginalized as outdated or problematic. The result is a civil service that's demographically diverse but intellectually homogeneous, incapable of challenging prevailing orthodoxies or thinking genuinely original thoughts. Parliamentary sovereignty, the foundational principle of British democracy, has been so eroded by judicial activism, international law, and bureaucratic capture that it exists more in constitutional theory than political reality. Parliament can pass laws, but courts interpret them creatively, international bodies override them routinely, and civil servants implement them selectively. The gap between what voters think they are voting for and what they actually get has never been wider, yet the political class acts as if nothing has changed. The conclusion here is uncomfortable but unavoidable. British democracy is becoming increasingly hollow. The forms and ceremonies continue, the elections still happen, and the debates still rage, but real power has been redistributed away from voters and towards unelected institutions, international bodies, and bureaucratic networks. This isn't necessarily a conspiracy, it's structural evolution that's happened gradually, with each individual change seeming reasonable at the time. What makes this particularly insidious is that it's all hidden in plain sight. The information is available, the mechanisms are documented, and the processes are legal. Yet the complexity is so overwhelming, and the media coverage so superficial, that most people never connect the dots. They wonder why their votes don't seem to matter, why politics feels increasingly disconnected from their lives, and why the same policies keep getting implemented regardless of which party wins elections. The solution isn't simple because the problem isn't simple. Restoring democratic accountability would require dismantling decades of accumulated institutional power, challenging international agreements that constrain domestic choice, and creating transparency where opacity currently rules. It would mean accepting that some problems can't be solved by experts and technocrats, that democratic choices sometimes produce suboptimal outcomes, and that accountability matters more than efficiency. But understanding the problem is the first step towards solving it, which is why you need to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this content with everyone who still believes democracy matters. The next video will explore exactly how these power structures operate in practice, with specific examples that'll make your jaw drop. The British political system is far more interesting and far more troubling than anything you'll see in the House of Commons chamber. Don't miss what comes next. Your understanding of British democracy depends on it.